Welcome to the Ask the Experts podcast. Here's Curran Bhatia.
I am Curran Bhatia. This is Ask the Experts. We are getting you ready for one of the biggest heavyweight title fights in years. It is Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury II, the rematch. As we know, the first fight was extremely exciting. Fury dancing around doing his thing, but in round 9, Wilder caught him, and then of course in round 12, Wilder with the big right and left. Down goes Fury. We think it's all over, and somehow he's able to Undertaker himself up. Fury is, and able to get to his feet, and actually had success later in that round. We know the first fight, of course, was ruled a draw, and now we are seeing it again. It's two top heavyweights in their prime, undefeated, charismatic, larger than life. I mean, it really doesn't get better than this. We have two giant marketing arms of Fox and ESPN promoting this one. I was lucky enough to produce the countdown show, the preview show for this one that aired on Fox and ESPN. So I've been intimately familiar with this fight, the previous fights that took place. And I have also assembled a panel of experts to talk about this fight and get you ready for everything this weekend. And I'll get into those guests. But first, I'm going to quickly talk about my take on what I think is going to happen in this rematch. So obviously the conventional wisdom seems to be Wilder, right? People are saying that Wilder, maybe his right hand was hurt in the first fight. He still was able to get the draw, so that would lead you to believe that if his right hand is healthy this time, he's even more likely to do some damage on Tyson Fury and win the fight by knockout. Now, while I agree that I think we're going to see a better version of Deontay Wilder, I think he's been more active against top opposition, obviously knocking out Luis Ortiz, aka the Boogeyman, in their rematch. I do also want to point out that you have to look at the mental game when you're looking at big fights like this. And if you follow Tyson Fury's story, he talked about it extensively on the Joe Rogan podcast, and I would highly recommend listening to that podcast. When he was at his lowest point, 400 plus pounds, suffering with depression, he was suicidal. He finally picked himself up. He started training again, and his first run when he was 400 pounds, he was running down the street, and he was so large that he had to stop and take a break and started walking. And when he was walking, he pulled out his cell phone, he went on Instagram, and he saw a video from Deontay Wilder, and this was before their first fight. This is when Tyson Fury, after he beat Vladimir Klitschko, he kind of went off into a depression and gained weight, and he saw a video from Deontay Wilder, and Deontay Wilder said, now Tyson Fury is fully out of the picture, he's done. And that actually really motivated Tyson Fury, and what he took from that is that his goal became beating Deontay Wilder, and he actually got very close to doing so in their first fight. Like we said, that was a draw. So in terms of a mental aspect, a lot of Tyson Fury's comeback, a lot of what he's been working on for the last 3-4 years, ever since the Klitschko fight, has been about beating this one man. And I think when you're extremely motivated, that can help a person in a big way. But with that all said, I do think that in terms of trending in the right direction, I think Wilder is trending in an even better direction. I think he's had more focus than Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury hasn't fought top opposition. He's been doing a lot of things. He wants to dip his toe in MMA. He did a WWE wrestling match. He recorded an album, right? So he's been keeping busy, and he has been making changes. We know he switched trainers from Ben Davidson to Sugar Hill Stewart, who's a great trainer. But I just think in terms of the way that both men are trending, I think Deontay Wilder is trending in the right direction in terms of boxing, right? In terms of the success he's had recently in boxing since the first fight with Fury. And that's why I do give the edge to Deontay Wilder. I think he's going to win by knockout, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as other people are saying. I don't think this is going to be a first-round knockout or necessarily a super early knockout. I think he's going to find the right hand, find the opening, but I think it's going to take a little bit longer than most people do. I also think, we talk about in fighting, in boxing especially, that in a rematch, usually the counterpuncher has the advantage over the brawler, right? Because in the first fight, the brawler kind of comes out, is doing his thing. The counterpuncher has time, 12 rounds usually, to figure out the brawler, right? And then by the time it gets to the rematch, which you could say is round 13, the next round, the counterpuncher is able to take that 12 rounds of knowledge and put it to work. In this case, it's a little different because you have a big right-hand knockout guy in Wilder, and then you have not necessarily a brawler or anything like that, a slick a slick mover in Tyson Fury. He's got that frenetic movements. He can move for a large man, 6'9", over 250 pounds. And so I actually think if you look at who has the advantage going into round 13, you say it's Wilder, because his game plan involves finding openings. And we know that if you look at the first fight, he was able to find those openings later in the fight. Round 9, and then, of course, round 12, where he almost ended it. He was less than 1 second away from ending it. So I think what that means is I think he's going to take that knowledge and how to find those openings and bring those into the rematch. And I think that's another advantage for Deontay Wilder. But you don't have to take my word for it. We have a group of experts to talk about that. And my first guest is a Fox commentator. He's a legendary trainer. He's working with Chris Arreola. He's working with Sergey Lipinets. He's worked with a bunch of other people. And that is Joe Goossen. And Joe is a great analyst in terms of fighting styles, fighting mechanics, and he's going to break down Wilder versus Fury. He's going to get you ready for the rematch. He's going to tell you what to look for, so you don't want to miss that. Then up next, I have an opponent of Tyson Fury's that is one of the men on planet Earth that was able to knock down Tyson Fury. So we talked about Deontay Wilder knocking down Tyson Fury, but another man who did that is Steve Cunningham. Tyson Fury came to America in 2013 to have his first fight in America versus Steve Cunningham, who's coming up from cruiserweight. And in the second round of that fight, Steve Cunningham landed a huge overhand right, knocked down Fury. He's one of the only two people on planet Earth, him and Deontay Wilder, are the only people to knock down Tyson Fury. So he obviously has intimate knowledge of Tyson Fury because he fought him. Now, Cunningham did end up getting knocked out by Fury, but he also ended up joining his training camp later on and training with him. So I'm going to talk to him about that. He knows Tyson Fury very well, and he's going to be able to handicap this fight. He's going to tell us about the rematch between Wilder and Fury and how he feels the fight is going to play out. And if he noticed any openings when he found that right hand to knock down Fury. Has he noticed any openings, and has Wilder seen the same openings? I asked him about that. Then, you want to talk about someone who was intimately involved in Fight 1 between Wilder and Fury. I am talking to the only other person on planet Earth who was inside of the boxing ring, and that is Jack Reiss. This is a brand new interview with Jack Reiss. I'm talking to him about Wilder Fury, and we're also going to talk about an interesting fight that happened recently, and there's some controversy there. Bryant Perella took on Abel Ramos, and it really seemed like a ho-hum fight. It was just a normal fight where Bryant Perella was doing his thing. He was outlanding Ramos by 2-1, and then in the 12th and final round, something extraordinary happened, something spectacular. We call boxing the theater of the unexpected, and this was a classic example of that. Ramos was losing the fight on all the scorecards, and he knocks down Perella. Perella gets back up. Ramos knocks him down again with less than 10 seconds to go. Jack Reiss is counting out Bryant Perella, and he tells Bryant Perella, he says, walk over there and come back to me. Bryant Perella walks in one direction. He doesn't come back to Jack Reiss. He stumbles, and Jack Reiss makes the call that he wants to stop the fight and give the knockout win to Abel Ramos. Now, I personally think that was the right decision on the broadcast. Brian Kenny and Joe Goossen agreed that was the right decision, but it was a very dramatic and controversial decision because if he lets that fight go, the bell is going to ring and Brian Peralta is going to win the fight. But by waving it off, Abel Ramos wins by knockout. So I'm going to talk to him about that decision. How did he make that decision? What goes into making a split-second decision like that has such huge consequences, right? Awarding one man winner, one man loser. Now, that doesn't really matter when you're making the decision. You have to do what is right for the sport by the rules of the sport. And we talked to Jack about that, and he's going to break down what was going on in his head during that moment and tell us about all the variables and all the things that went into making that decision. Then, my final guest, it has been in the news lately, and that is Franchon Crews-Dezurn. So Crews-Dezurn had a fight recently against Alejandra Jimenez. Now, Jimenez tested positive in one of her tests after the fight, and we're going to talk to Crews-Dezurn about the aftermath with that, what's going to happen now with the belt. Crews-Dezurn ended up losing the fight, but now with that positive test by her opponent, that changes everything, and that's going to change the landscape, so I asked her about that. There was also the hair moment heard around around the world between rounds 9 and 10. So I'm going to ask her about that. She had a beef with Snoop Dogg, so that's also interesting. So I had a nice conversation with Franchon Crews-Dezurn that you are also going to want to listen to. But first, as I said, we are about to see a great classic heavyweight fight, an historic fight between Deontay Wilder, undefeated. He is the WBC heavyweight champion of the world. And Tyson Fury, also undefeated. He is the lineal champion. They are squaring off on Saturday night on pay-per-view, and this is a massive event, a heavyweight event that I think sports fans, general sports fans, are going to want to tune into. So we need to get you ready for that. So without further ado, here is my first guest, Fox analyst, legendary trainer, Joe Goossen. I am Curran Bhatia, and let's ask the experts. I am Curran Bhatia. This is Ask the Experts. Lucky enough to be chatting with legendary trainer Joe Goossen. Joe, first of all, thank you for joining me. So we know that we are about to have the huge heavyweight rematch, Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. And I wanted to start off by asking you, there's conventional wisdom in fights and with rematches that say if there's a boxer versus a brawler, the boxer, especially like a counterpuncher, has advantage in the rematch because they are able to make the adjustments that they learned from fight one. And what I think about what's interesting about this fight is it's not really a boxer versus brawler. It's more of a guy with a one-punch knockout punch versus a guy who can move. It has frenetic movements, makes it difficult. So with that said, who do you think has the advantage going into the rematch between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury?
Well, number one, Curran, thank you for having me on your show, and it's great to hear from you again. And it's a pleasure to be here. To address your question, well, look, I mean, you could say in the fight with Wilder and Dezurn that Dezurn was the classic boxer counterpuncher, which he is. And if that held true, he should have won the second fight, but he got knocked out in one round. In the fight with Luis Ortiz is obviously the slick counterpunching Cuban defensive specialist and a hard counterpuncher as well. Well, in the second fight, it was worse for him than in the first fight, an earlier knockout. So I might take a little issue with the synopsis there. But that being said, for sure, Tyson Fury is the defensive specialist in this fight. Now you had a disparity in the scoring, and one judge had it even, throw that out, and then you had two judges left. One voted for Wilder, and the other one voted for Fury. Now Wilder did have the bigger spread, 15-11. As opposed to 14-12 for Fury. Now, I understand your question. Again, I think just those two examples, kind of show that, a guy that can punch like Wilder, will always seem to have the advantage over you. I think that Wilder probably went to school on that first fight. Now, and I'm sure you know, this is public knowledge now, that, Wilder had a hurt right hand. I have a friend of mine who's the main sparring partner for Wilder, and he told me, he said, look, we sparred, but he only uses left hand in that last training camp. He said, if I'm going to break my hand, I'm going to do it in the fight, not in sparring, because his hand supposedly had a little small fracture in it. Now, that said, between the fact that Wilder probably had a much better camp, and I talked to his trainer, Jadiz, who said, yes, we've studied that film, and we know the adjustments we have to make to deal with his constant head movement and work. And it's definitely to put more punches together in a series of combinations rather than looking for the home run all the time. So I think you're going to see a difference there. On the other hand, Fury was very quickly to admit in his press conference at the Staples Center, or that area they're in a few weeks back, that, look, it's the reason why he switched trainers. If everything went perfectly for Fury, as a lot of people contend, he wouldn't have fired his trainer. He's looking for something different in this fight because he knows it was a close fight, and he knows that he has to make adjustments as well as Wilder has to make adjustments. And the adjustments he talked about was, he said, look, I felt like I had no power on my punches. Check. I believe I agree with that. He said, 2, if I am going to box and counter and move like that, I have to counter punch more effectively. Check. I agree with that as well. Number 3, he said, I have to start using my knuckles more when throwing his punches. I agree with that. So but now on the other hand, he did say, I'm coming out to knock him out in the first couple rounds. Fury said, I'm going to come out and knock Wilder out. I think that's a red herring. I really don't think that's his strategy. If it was, I think it's a losing one. So I think he'll probably box like he did in the first fight, but I think he's probably intending to implement those changes that we just spoke of a minute ago, the harder punching, more counter punching, and so on and so forth. He also said that Wilder's jab was better than he thought, which if you look at the tape, the jabs that Wilder landed were like really hard, stiff, knuckle-burning jabs, where Fury's were touches. The jabs are setups for other punches and not necessarily there to inflict, a hurt, where Wilder's jabs really hurt. So I think you've got 2 guys who are going to be making serious adjustments to their styles, but not to change them so much that you don't recognize who they are in the ring. I think you're going to recognize both guys to what they're playing to their best attributes. And I will say this, even when Wilder fought Luis Ortiz, if you really scrutinize that tape, before he started closing the gap, I believe in the 6th round, Wilder was very, very calm and calculating in his defensive tactics. I don't think people gave him credit or have given him credit at how calm, cool, and collected he was against Ortiz. And he let that fight play out a little bit because remember, you're in there with a tricky southpaw. Punches come from a completely different angle. And, the majority of guys you're going to fight in your career, 95% of them are going to be right-handers. So all of your stuff that works is geared towards right-handers, where when you fight a left-hander, you have to do a crash course in relearning how to fight a southpaw. You have to be a southpaw swimmer. It's a whole, it's really a mess. I've done it many, many times. It's a tough deal. So that being said, a real cute and calculating guy like Luis Ortiz, you have to really, spend a few rounds getting his timing down before you start making your move. And that's exactly what Wilder did. And when Wilder decided that he had the right angle at the right time on Ortiz, boy, he let go a right hand that was just devastating and put Ortiz down and out very hard. So I think, Wilder's got the temperament and the learning curve to bring a much better fight to Saturday night than he did in the previous fight. Now, that being said, on the other hand, I think so does Fury. If because his Sugar Hill, his new trainer, is Wilder even said this. He said, I felt like I didn't even know boxing when I started training with Sugar Hill. In other words, that there's so many things I need to learn on how to really become a complete pro. I mean, you can be undefeated and you can be champ of the world, and sometimes you still feel inadequate as a fighter when you end up with a trainer that starts showing you stuff you never even knew existed. And it's like a bright light that goes off in their heads. I know, I've been there before. So I think, he's going to have some new tactics that he's going to implement through his new trainer. And I think that new trainer, who's trained many, many great pros, knows what he's doing. And so I think all the things that Fury said he needed to address were brought to light in these training sessions with Sugar Hill. That he goes, wow, I thought I was doing it right, but it looks to me like I really had a lot more to learn in terms of implementing certain things that would make a clear-cut win for me. So I think you're going to see both guys bringing a lot of new stuff to the table. It may be subtle, but there's going to be new things they're going to try to do in this fight. So I'm looking forward to, a very competitive fight. But Wilder has that great equalizer. He already put a crack in the china when he put, Fury down in the 9th round hard, and he put him down really hard in the 12th round. So, once you make that indelible stain, I should say, on a guy's mind, psyche, physically and mentally, by having him, down and almost out, you don't forget that. And your body and mind doesn't forget it. And so sometimes a good punch can trigger that again, and you go down even more easily. So I advantage there to Wilder, because Wilder never really got staggered, dropped, hurt. Did he get buzzed a couple times? Probably. But he never showed any effects as to the extent that Fury did. So, big advantage there. If I'm the trainer in Wilder's corner, I'm very confident that if we can land a good shot, it's going to trigger the past memories, and it does work like that, to tell you the truth. So, unless Fury has really improved on his power and he can make his punches have a much more serious effect when they do land, well, he might be in the same boat, fighting for his, the defensive survival in the fight when he starts wearing down, because Fury just keeps on coming. Wilder just keeps on coming. He's relentless in that respect. So, and you're always on your highest guard to make sure that he doesn't land even the semblance of a hard punch, because Wilder can hit you with half of his power and hurt you. So it's a dangerous fight. It's a dangerous fight for Fury, and it's a tactically dangerous fight for Wilder.
And it's an intriguing matchup. It's a rematch of two undefeated guys, and all the things you pointed out make it that much more interesting going into the rematch. Like you said, Fury bringing in the new trainer, trying something new. That's interesting what you said about Wilder having the injury in fight one, so that's not having that in the rematch is going to give him confidence. For that was, from a physical standpoint. Mentally, in terms of where these guys are, there was a story that Tyson Fury has talked about, that when he was at his lowest low point at 400 plus pounds, and he was trying to work out, and he went for a run, and he kind of stopped on the side of the road, and he opened up his phone, and he saw a video of Wilder, who said, this is before the first fight, Deontay Wilder said Tyson Fury's done, and that motivated Fury, and a lot of his comeback was based on beating Deontay Wilder. So a lot of his mental possible advantage is that this is what he's put his mind to. But at the same time, like you said, Deontay Wilder is also in a very good mental space. He did what he wanted to do versus Ortiz. He took his time, he was patient, and he found the opening. So from a mental perspective, you've seen these guys at press conferences, and you've seen them now on Fight Week. Who do you think has the mental edge going into the rematch?
I don't think it's a question. I think it's Deontay Wilder has the edge. I think a big edge. Remember, it looked like Fury was asleep in the 12th round, and somehow, some way, at 9, he pops up magically. This happens. I think those are the indelible marks that don't leave you as a fighter, knowing that you were down twice and 1 second away from the fight being stopped. So I think the edge there mentally goes to Deontay Wilder for sure. I would rather be on Wilder's side than Fury's side if it was just that subject matter alone about who got hurt, okay? And it was definitely Fury. So that's a big advantage when you're talking about heavyweights, because that's what they do. They're hard punchers normally. For a guy that's 6'9", as big as Fury, you would think he would bring more power to individual punches, but he really doesn't, and he's the first one to admit it. I'm not saying anything, denigrating to him. It's just the matter of fact, which he acknowledges, and he said he has to work on. So I think Wilder definitely has the advantage mentally and physically. I think the advantage that Fury holds is that he's very elusive, and if he can sustain that for 12 rounds, be elusive, but also be effective when you're backing up. See? So remember, in the pro game and on most scoring criteria, it's the effective aggressor. Who is the guy trying to make a fight? Okay? And when you're getting paid that type of money, you got to have somebody in the ring that's looking for a fight. All right? So that's why the effective aggressor is going to get the score for that round. Now, let's say you're the aggressor but not being effective. What I would ask, what is the other guy doing? He's offsetting the aggressor's offense, but while he's offsetting the aggressor's offense, is he scoring as well to the point to where it's effective punching? So if neither guy is being effective, one guy's backing up but not counterpunching or counterpunching well or effectively, and the other guy is coming forward but not being effective, you got to give it just to the aggressor. So, that is a criteria of one of the main, probably 85% of scoring around is, ring generalship, but more importantly, the effective aggressor. But if neither guy is being effective offensively, whether backing up or coming forward, the guy that's not being effective but is coming forward gets the round. So, you got to look at it that way when you're scoring these rounds, okay? Fury may be elusive and tactically savvy, but is he being effective as he moves backwards? And so if he isn't, then you got to give it to the guy coming forward, trying to make the fight happen. Now, we've seen many over the years, many guys that back up, that every time you make a mistake, they'll counterpunch you effectively and devastatingly. Okay, there's lots of guys that do that. Mayweather was a great example. You missed with him, he'd make you pay, and dearly. So, again, if you're going to be retreating, you better do it effectively. Otherwise, the guy that's trying to make the fight should get the round scored, and that's how you have to look at these rounds. When you're scoring them, not just, oh, look, he made Wilder miss. He made Wilder, yeah, well, okay, but what is he doing in response to those misses? So this is something that I know when I have guys in fights that the judges are looking for. They're looking for the effective aggressor, or at least the aggressor.
Absolutely, and it is really a fascinating matchup for all the reasons you said. You've obviously been in boxing for such a long time. Where does just this matchup, I mean, where does this rank in all-time heavyweight fights? I mean, like we talked about, you have two undefeated guys. They're both charismatic. They're both larger than life. The WBC champion versus the lineal champion. And to top it all off, they had a thrilling first fight, which came down to a guy getting up off the canvas in the 12th round. I mean, just as an event, where does this rank for you think, in terms of big boxing events that we've had?
Well, I think that this is because here's something you got to remember is Deontay Wilder is breaking all sorts of heavyweight records. So what you're seeing a legendary guy in the making. As long as he can continue to keep winning, when he wins, he'll win devastatingly. So I think you're witnessing a guy that has unparalleled one-punch knockout power in the heavyweight division. For a long time, we haven't seen that. I think the closest may have been Foreman, somebody like that with one-punch knockout power. But even then, Foreman didn't dispatch as many guys as fiercely, you might say, with the Wilder. Because I always compare to Wilder. I say he's the Tommy Hearns of the heavyweight division. If you remember Tommy Hearns, he didn't need two punches. He needed one punch, and that was that straight right hand. I know, I went up against him in 1981. Believe me, he was a frightening puncher. That said, Wilder is a man making history in real time right now. His knockout prowess is really almost unparalleled, and he's got a lot of fight left in him. So I think you're going to see a guy and that is going to be heralded one day as one of the great heavyweights of all time. On the other hand, you got Fury, who was really one of a kind. He is, it's almost like he's the least serious great fighter you're ever going to meet. He took 3 years off. He gained 400 pounds. there's a lot of ups and downs with his career. There's a lot to be said about that. Wilder is very steady. You know, he's an overachiever. But Fury is one of those rare heavyweights that has defensive skills like a middleweight, you know, and against the right opponent, his offense is also very effective when he's making you miss. Against Wilder, he was much, much, much more cautious about working his offense too much because, you know, it leaves you vulnerable. So I think you've got one of the great defensive fighters of all time. He's 6'9". He's got an incredible reach, and for a guy at 6'9", he really has defensive skills of a middleweight. And to me, middleweights are always the best athletes out there because they pack the punch of big guys, but they can also have the fluidity of smaller guys. It's kind of one of those divisions that just, you know, is very, very difficult to be in. Now, that said, yeah, I think this fight is going to be a classic. I think both guys are going to be even more prepared for the first one. So if you like the first one, you're going to love the second one. I know I'm going. I'm not working the fight. I'm not announcing the fight. And I rarely go fights that I'm not working, whether it be in the corner with my own fighter or at the commentating table. I rarely go to fights because I'm in the gym all the time. Like right now, I'm in the gym with Lipinets training for his IBF interim title, April 11th. So that I got Areola, you know, back looking, you know, to train again real quickly starting next week. So, you know, my hands are full. So, but I'm going to this fight. I want to be there live for this fight, although I'm not participating in it.
And no, that was my question. This is such a big event that it's actually a Fox and ESPN joint broadcast, as we know, in terms of the pre-production was done by Fox, the show that I produced and that you were on. And then now it seems like Fight Week will be ESPN. But in terms of talent and announcers, it's a mix of ESPN and Fox. So I know you said you're going to be an observer that night. Are you a little bit upset about that at all in terms of not being part of this historic broadcast?
I can honestly tell you from the bottom of my heart, Curran, I am not. I just finished a show in Nashville this weekend, the Caleb Plant fight. I was on the road, you know, 4 days there. You know, I'm in the gym. I'm working very hard to get wins for my fighters and get ratings for Fox. So, you know, that's my focus. Now, on this particular fight, it's a shared a commentary team, you know, between ESPN and Fox, and I think that they got the right guy out there to represent Fox, namely, in particular, Lennox Lewis. Why? Lennox Lewis was one of the great champions the heavyweight division has ever known. He ruled it for basically 12 years. Sometimes when I forget how great Lennox Lewis was, I turn on a tape and I look at Lennox Lewis's highlights and I go, man, I'm sitting next to one of the great heavyweights of all time. He could really do it all. He was an amazing fighter. And so I think he's going to represent this broadcast and Fox quite well, seeing as that he was in the shoes of these guys that are going to be in the ring Saturday night. And if anybody can relate to that, it's Lennox Lewis. And if anybody has, I think, a valid opinion on what is going on in the ring, Lennox Lewis is your guy. I'm happy for him, and I'm happy for Fox and ESPN, for that matter, quite frankly. And I just think it's going to be a great show, regardless. I think the commentators are going to have a lot to talk about because I think it's going to be an action-packed fight. I really do. I think it's going to be much better than the first fight, much more thrills.
Certainly, and Lennox Lewis, of course, had the experience of fighting Tyson on a joint network event of this magnitude. So let me just ask you two last quick questions because I know you got to run. I know you have a busy day. Number one, the way you were speaking about Wilder, talking about you know, his moment in this era, it seems like you are kind of putting him at the top in terms of this era. If he is able to get past Fury, and that is not an easy task, as we know, but if he is, does that mean that you would most likely favor Wilder over the mythical matchup against Anthony Joshua if that fight ever happens?
Regardless of what happens in this fight, I would still favor him over Joshua, without a doubt. Deontay Wilder is the most dangerous heavyweight in the world, bar none. He's the most dangerous guy. Look, if you said to yourself, if you ask yourself a question, if Andy Ruiz, in the condition he was in, or I should say the lack of condition that he was in, for the second Joshua fight, how long do you think he would have lasted with Deontay Wilder?
Not very long.
Okay. Well, look what happened with Anthony Joshua. He was very cautious. He took very few chances. And he had what you might say, not in the first fight, because Andy Ruiz was in tip-top shape for the first fight. But in the second fight, he had Andy Ruiz that was overweight. And my estimation, and, I respect all these guys, but I think he was ill-prepared compared to the first fight that he trained for. And I'm speaking of Ruiz. So, again, I say substitute Deontay Wilder for Anthony Joshua in the rematch with Andy Ruiz and ask yourself what would have been the outcome.
Right, that's a very interesting way to look at it. And of course, Ruiz, the first time around against Anthony Joshua, I think it was 41 days since his last fight. So he was still in that fighting mode, in that training mode. In the rematch, he was partying, he was buying houses, he was celebrating, and he gained a lot of weight. He came in at 283 pounds. And by his own admission, he kind of dropped the ball there. And that was my last question for you, is we know that Ruiz is looking for a new trainer. I know Teddy Atlas was mentioned, and you've obviously worked with a larger heavyweight like Chris Arreola. Would you ever work with Andy Ruiz? Is that something that you would be interested in?
Well, there's very few people in this boxing world that I wouldn't work with. So that, is an evasive answer, but it's an answer nonetheless. But my loyalties actually, until further notice, lie with Chris Arreola. He's the guy that I want to get back to the top. He's 38 years old. He had a great fight against Kovnatsky. A lot of people thought it was a lot closer than the scoring, and that was with a hurt hand that he sustained in the fourth round. Arreola, they broke, 5 or 6 heavyweight records for punches thrown, power punches, so on and so forth. It was just an incredible fight. They threw more punches than most lightweights in that fight. It was nonstop action. I think Arreola, if he continues to train like he did for the first fight and gets back, to the same form that he had going in the Kovnatsky fight, maybe even better form, I think he's a threat to a lot of people in the heavyweight division. So, you never know who they might want to hook, match these two guys up eventually. And if they do, I got to go with the guy that, came and sought me out and gave me the opportunity. I'm a loyal guy in that way. So, unless Chris Arreola wasn't in the boxing game anymore, I would consider that. But he is in the boxing game, and I want to train him, and I want to get him back to the top. So, I guess the roundabout way of saying no, I wouldn't train Andy Ruiz at this particular time because I've got Chris Arreola.
Well, that's great to hear. And I know I said that last one was the last question, but you just said something that was interesting. I know that after the fight with Kovnatsky, it was a great fight for Arreola. Arreola was talking about retirement. Are you saying that Arreola has decided not to retire and to continue his career?
No, he is not. He's not going to retire. Why? Had he had a very poor performance, had the fight played out differently where it was just a wipeout or something like that, I would probably be the first one to encourage him. But he just took on the number one contender basically, and it was a real tug of war all the way through the fight, with a lot of people saying, "Hey, I thought at worst it should have been a draw." So that being said, a lot of people commented on that fight in that regard. That being said, Chris Arreola is still, as they say, very viable.
No, absolutely. He's someone that we'd want to see in against anyone. So, Joe Goossen, I know that you have a busy day, so I want to thank you for your analysis, for getting us ready for this big, huge main event fight. I know we're all looking forward to it. I know you are, and I just want to say I very much appreciate you breaking it down and showing us all the angles on this.
Well, I hope I was able to inform your fans and, about my opinion on it, and hopefully it carries some weight, and we'll see what happens Saturday night. Like I said, though, I think it's going to be better than the first, and the first one was great. It had everything in it. So I think this should do well, this fight, in all regards, for the fans, for the fighters, and for, guys like you and me that are in the business, I think we're going to really enjoy this one. I'm looking forward to it. So, and then thank you again for, inviting me onto your show. I very much appreciate it.
That was the great Joe Goossen breaking it down from a technical standpoint, from a stylistic standpoint, just giving you all the angles and things to watch out for when you do watch this rematch between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. Up next, we talked about Deontay Wilder landing a knockdown against Tyson Fury. One other man on planet Earth was able to do that, and that is Steve Cunningham. He fought Tyson Fury in 2013 in Madison Square Garden. He landed the knockdown punch, and I'm going to ask him how he did that. I'm going to ask him his pick on Wilder versus Fury II. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Steve USS Cunningham. I am Curran Bhatia, lucky enough to be joined by Steve USS Cunningham, former cruiserweight champion. So Steve, first of all, thank you so much for joining me.
Yep. Thanks for having me, man. What's up?
And we know that you, of course, took on Tyson Fury back in 2013, and now he's getting ready for the big rematch with Deontay Wilder. And you are one of the few human beings on planet Earth with Deontay Wilder who was able to knock down Tyson Fury. So let's just start there. Second round, Madison Square Garden. You're taking on this massive man in Tyson Fury, and you were able to get that second round knockdown. How did that feel?
It was so man, I don't even know the word. This isn't a word that grasps what I felt at that time because of all of the trash talk and even in the first round, all of the taunting. It was just overwhelming joy. Like, I got you. You know what I mean? Like, you bastard.
You certainly got him in that moment, especially after the first round. He tried shoving you, and then you came back with the massive overhand right. And did you think, was there any part of you that said that fight might be over right there? He might stay down?
I was hoping. I went back to the corner, like, I'm watching him, like, he sat up for a minute, and I'm like, stay down, stay down. Then when he sat up, it was like he was collecting himself. I was like, all right, just keep going back to work, but I was hoping he stayed down, no doubt.
And, later on in that fight, he's admitted since then that you were the better boxer, you were the quicker fighter, which is all true. He had the size advantage, and he used that. He kind of leaned on you. Was that difficult? He came in, he weighed in at 254 pounds. You weighed in at 210. So a sizable difference there, not to mention how much you guys rehydrated. Was it difficult to just deal with the size of him?
It was, and I believe it was 269 actually, but he was it was a little difficult because he was in shape, a big guy in shape, man. He kind of stuck with me, and also I didn't stick completely to the game plan of just completely boxing, completely outbox him, and that was because of my fight with Tomas Adamic months before, where I boxed a complete shutout, and yet I still lost a split decision. So I'm thinking in my mind, because, people didn't look at me as a real heavyweight. They didn't, they gave it to Adamic because they wanted him to, because he was a heavyweight now, supposedly. And I felt that I had to fight a little more, rumble a little more, let these people see I can crack and, get Fury out of there. That was my plan, but it wasn't Nazim's game plan. So his weight, for me, in a 12-round fight, I go through stages. I'll get winded and then get a second win.
Right.
8th, 9th, I'll get a third win, So I was banking on getting out of that round. Like, all right, I'm a little tired now because I've been wrestling with this dude for 4 or 5 rounds. And he's been like holding, pushing, he did what he had to do. I was like, all right, next round I'm gonna be fresh, and I just didn't make it out. Didn't make it out of that round. So it was taxing, wrestling around with a guy who knows. He knew what he was doing, and that, hats off to him for that.
he was able to make the adjustments and use the size advantage there. When he looks back now in preparation for his Wilder rematch, when he's doing press and things like that, he has said that Steve Cunningham was the most difficult fight of his career. He doesn't consider Deontay Wilder or Klitschko or anyone else. Do you take pride in the fact that you were the toughest fight of his career?
Indeed. Because I mean, for a few reasons. One is, you know, my hard work is recognized. You know, not just by fans. You know, fans will tell you stuff like that all day. Man, you look great, you know, because they're your fans. But when the fighter, who not only now is probably considered one of probably the best heavyweight of this era right now, or one of them, says this, that is unbelievable, you know. And he's being very honest. He's being very cavalier with it, and I'm just like, wow, you know, because also with me, number three is a lot of people, especially here in America, haven't really seen me a lot, you know, even as a champion. So a lot of them, they like, who is this guy Cunningham? And it's like, man, Tyson Fury's giving this dude the ultimate props, you know. So indeed, man, it's man, that's a huge thing for me, man.
And you, I'm sure, were an interested observer when Wilder and Fury met for the first time, and we'll talk about the knockdowns in that fight. But when you were watching that fight, early on, while Fury's moving around, doing his thing, Wilder's having trouble finding him, were you surprised that Wilder looked frustrated and wasn't able to find Tyson Fury in that first fight?
No, I wasn't, because after my fight with Fury, probably 3 months later, I went into training camp with him for 4 weeks to help him prepare for David Haye, and with the fight which didn't happen. So, but we were there for 4 weeks, and I got to know Fury. I got to spar with him. I got to see that he can move. That's when I saw he was a good boxer. You know, I didn't see good boxing against me, you know, because like you said, I was faster than him. I was this and that. So he switched gears. He's like, hey, well, F this. I'm going to just lock up my head, lock up my guard, high guard, and just walk him down. And he couldn't do that to Deontay. But, really, we saw his boxing ability with Vladimir, you know, beautiful. Had fun doing it. Big guy, 6'9", boxing, jabbing, throwing combinations. So when he did it with Wilder, I wasn't surprised at all, you know. But I wasn't surprised with the knockdowns either.
That's what I wanted to ask you. So obviously 2 big knockdowns in that first fight. First one in round 9, and it was more of a glancing blow. But Fury did go down. On that first knockdown by Wilder in round 9, did that remind you anything of your knockdown? What were you thinking when you saw Fury go down for the first time?
No, not the first knockdown. The second knockdown is the one that reminded me of my knockdown, because it was a hard. Those are some hard shots that Wilder landed on him, and he went down. But really, what reminded me of my knockdown was him getting up, and you know, him being a little game more for Wilder though, because when I knocked him down, he was really his brain was really twisted, you know, scrambled. But he got back up with Wilder and dished out some good heat. But that's the knockdown that reminded me of my knockdown of him.
Certainly. In your fight with him, you actually ended up landing a few other right hands during the fight, and it took him a little while to kind of lean on you and get his composure back before the end of the fight. So now that we are looking at the rematch, Wilder versus Fury II, and I feel like you are one of the people that is uniquely qualified to analyze this fight because you fought Tyson Fury. You're obviously an interested observer in the heavyweight division, and I know you dipped your toes in that division. So how do you see their rematch playing out, Wilder versus Fury II?
I'm gonna be real honest. I see Wilder stopping Fury probably by 9 or 8. Let me start with Fury. Fury, he gets under your skin, you know, throughout the press conference, throughout the tour, throughout the build-up, the way he talks, you know, with what he's talking, which is great, you know, marketing move on his part. To get in your head. And you see in the first fight that he got in Wilder's head, you know. And when Wilder first came out in the first round, Wilder was trying to take his head off with any type of right hand, a wild right hand, an uppercut, all wild shots. And, you know, Fury's expecting that. You know, he knows you guys are going to come out winging at him now because he's got under your skin. But you see, as time went on, Wilder calmed down and he straightened that right hand out, and then boom, we have a knockdown, and I think it was round 8, and then boom, we have another knockdown. You know, so once I think Wilder's going to come out this fight a little more settled down, a little more relaxed, and that right hand's going to find a home earlier and earlier and earlier. So it may not be a knockout, it may be a stoppage, you know, because Fury, or also it could be a split. I mean, not a split, I'm sorry, it could be a decision win on Wilder's part because he may knock him down 4 times, you know, and because Fury gets up, Fury will get up, but we'll see, you know. But I have Wilder winning by KO 9 or 8, and also Fury. There's not too much Fury. There's not too much Fury can do different.
Yep.
You know what I mean? He's saying, "Oh, I'm going to walk him down. I'm going to knock him out in 2 rounds." Like I said in the telecast, in the commentary of the fight. Who believes that? You know what I mean? Like, who believes that? Fury's not. So Fury has never done that. He did it to me. He was able to do it to me, but after he succumbed through some serious heat, and only because I was so small. But he's not going to be able to do that to Deontay Wilder. That's going to set him up for a quicker knockout by Wilder. Fury cannot do anything too much different, but box a little bit better, and he boxed greatly in the first fight. You cannot avoid that right hand. No one in boxing, Lomachenko, Sweet Pea Whitaker, you know, Sugar Ray Leonard could not avoid their opponent's power shot for 12 rounds. That's just impossible. So, and Deontay Wilder, he, like you said earlier, the first shot barely hit him.
Right.
And you see what it did. So all he needs is just to get a target and land anywhere, and that right hand will do what it does. So Fury can't really do anything too different. Wilder is the one who can do something different. Wilder can he can sharpen it up. He can turn that broadsword into a katana, or a razor sharp katana, shoot it straight. And like I said, that's why I believe we're going to see a 9th or 8th round stoppage possibly.
And that's great analysis. And the other thing that you're, like I said, uniquely qualified for is you also went through the build-up with Tyson Fury, and that was the press conferences and the way that he tries to mentally get in your head. And he was a big talker before your fight because it was his U.S. debut, and he was looking to make a splash. You've obviously been following, I'm sure. What do you think about the mental edge going into the rematch for Fury and Wilder? Obviously, Fury is talking a lot, but Wilder is also charismatic. He's also a good speaker. What do you think about who has the mental edge going into the rematch?
I really think Wilder has the mental edge going into the rematch because, I mean, even Fury, and I also believe Fury has a high level of confidence and a mental edge for himself. But I believe Wilder has the mental edge because the knockdown, period. And it's not just, Wilder knocked Fury down a couple times in the fight, but his other fights were decisions and split decisions. No, this is what Wilder does. You know, Wilder doesn't win decisions. Wilder knocks you out. And he got 2 on Fury in the first fight. He has the mental edge because it's like, I got 2 last time. I'm gonna get him earlier this time. Probably get 3, or I probably land it harder and he stays down this time. So Wilder has the mental edge. He has those knockdowns pushing him like a force. Fury has a confidence that's unmatched. You know, he has a mental fortitude that's unmatched. I mean, we've seen it in my fight and in the Wilder fight. This dude got floored with some great shots, and he got up and he kept pushing. And after he got up from the Wilder fight, knockdowns in the last round, the last knockdowns, he hit Wilder with some shots that made Wilder stop in his tracks. You know, so but I give the mental edge to Wilder though, big time.
And it's in a rematch. Sometimes they say it's round 13, and if you use that kind of terminology, then it is an advantage for Wilder because he found those knockdowns late in the fight. The way he found those openings, I'm just curious. you found the opening in the second round. Is there anything specific that you remember as a way to find openings on Tyson Fury? Is there something you have to do with like your jab or foot movement and that causes, you know, Fury to do something which gives an opening, or is every situation different?
Well, yeah, indeed. Every situation is different, and there are things that I saw, but really that first knockdown, that overhand right, is all credit to my trainer, Brother Nazim Richardson. When we signed a contract and started training camp, the first thing Brother Nazim said in training camp was, we're going to knock him down with this overhand right. So we drilled that overhand right almost every day of training camp. I'm telling you, I was sick of it. We drilled it. Brother Nazim had a guy standing on top of a tire, one of those huge tires, to make him about 6'8", 6'9", holding the medicine ball, and I just kept just go jab, overhand, left hook, jab, overhand, left hook. I mean, he just had me doing it, man, all day, every day. So, along with other things, but you know, so when Fury threw out that, when he was goofing off in the second round, you know, playing, he thought he had me, and I tried to throw the right hand in the first round a little bit, and it was like a gauge, like, okay, I got to let it out a little more, you know, next time. And he threw like a lazy jab, and it just happened. I didn't even think about it. It wasn't even a thought, because it was like muscle memory, you know. It was just there. It just happened, bang. And that's why I turned around to the camera and was like, you know, because it's like, wow, I was shocked.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and it's really interesting because sometimes when you see a fighter throw that big looping overhand shot, it kind of almost seems like, oh, that's lucky. Obviously, in your case, you're saying it was instinctual because that's what you and Brother Nazim practiced in the gym, and you were able to execute that. I wanted to ask you about something you said earlier. You said that Fury is one of the best heavyweights of the era. You know, before we had the four-headed monster with Ruiz, Joshua, Wilder, and Fury. Now Ruiz is kind of out of that picture, back to the three-headed monster. Do you feel like Tyson Fury is kind of the top dog in this era, or do you think, you know, it's going to be Wilder if he can win, or Joshua? How do you see the heavyweight picture right now?
Yeah, whoever wins this fight is the top dog. I mean, I'm gonna keep it, like I said, I'm gonna keep it real and cavalier with you. Joshua is he's not really in the picture as of top, you know, one or two right now. You know, I'll give him three, possibly. You know what I'm saying? 3 or 4. I'd put Ortiz over him because of the Ruiz fight. You know what I mean? To an extent. But I'll keep it real. Keep Joshua at 3, but I'll put Ruiz at a close 4. Ortiz. I'm sorry, Ortiz, not Ruiz.
Yeah, Luis Ortiz.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll put Ortiz at a close 4, right under Joshua. Very close. That would be an awesome fight, actually. But Wilder or Fury, the winner, is the top guy, period. I don't care how many belts, how many titles Joshua has. Wilder and Fury they're setting the tone for the heavyweight division. They're setting the standard. They're fighting each other back to back. Wilder has fought Ortiz twice. Fury, you know, he beat Vladimir, and you know, and he's fighting Wilder 2 times. I mean, man, Joshua needs to get in this mix before he's left out. You know what I mean? He needs to get in this mix.
No, certainly. We're getting this great heavyweight matchup a second time, and it would be great if the winner can eventually fight Joshua. That doesn't seem like it's necessarily in Joshua's his plans right now, but hopefully it becomes in his plans. So just to wrap it up, you know, I know that you had a great career, cruiserweight, heavyweight. I know you're 43 years old now. Are you officially retired? Is there a chance that we could ever see you back in the ring?
Oh, indeed. It's my goal. I've been trying to get back in the ring for about a year now. Things have been falling out. I just want to do, you know, a couple fights, one fight, possibly 2, but and then retire. But you know, one fight, I could do one more fight and be like, hey, I'm done. My career is done. I'll pass the torch to my sons who box. And you know, and I'm actually passing the torch now. My boys are doing great. My 9-year-old is number 1 in the nation. My 17-year-old is number 4. We're doing good. I'll pass the torch to them completely. But it's just, I want to do another fight for me to finish, to go out on the way, on my terms, and, a nice fight, something entertaining, and that's it,
And congratulations to your sons for the success that they've had. That sounds great. So would your comeback fight be at cruiserweight, at heavyweight? What weight class do you think?
I would like it to be at heavyweight because I enjoy the challenge. Heavyweight, the name is prestigious. I felt good at heavyweight. I mean, the true only loss I had at heavyweight was Fury. The Atomic fight was bull. We all know that was bogus. Who else? The Glasgow fight. Come on, whoever saw that knows who exactly won that. And the Tarver fight. That was come on. And I quote unquote fight to a draw with the guy who was using steroids. So. And that wasn't even a draw, but it is what it is. So I feel good at heavyweight. I really enjoy heavyweight because they're not as dangerous as cruiserweights. Once you take away the power from the heavyweight, in my eyes, it's open season. It's open season.
And the fact that you did knock down Fury, would you ever want another crack at Tyson Fury, or is that ship kind of sailed?
I mean, I'm a realist, man. If Fury says, "Hey, Steve, I'm gonna give you a crack," oh man, that'd be a damn dream come true. That would be a freaking dream come true. But I mean, listen, this is boxing. I know the business. My wife's my manager. We plan on managing my 17-year-old or when he turns pro in a few years. So we know the business. I know that's not going to happen. It could, and I would love it to, but I mean, I know it's not. So it's not something I spend time on. I'm not even. You don't even hear me saying, "Oh, Fury, give me a rematch." It's like he's on a different level. I'm very happy for him because being in camp with him for 4 weeks, I saw the debacle, some of the stuff that was going on, and he would talk about it with the David Haye fight. That was his big fight. It fell through, and I felt bad for him then, because it was some serious money on the table. I'm like, damn, wow, that's some hard stuff. But I was happy to see him beat Vladimir, get the titles. He's making mega bucks right now. I mean, that's awesome. Hats off to any fighter that can get to that level. And he's doing it well.
And just to wrap it up, final question. Just when you look back at the great career you have, I know that you said it's not over, and I know you're working on your comeback. But when you look back at all the stuff you achieved, cruiserweight champion, contending at heavyweight, any regrets? Anything you would have done differently when you look back?
Yeah, indeed. There's just one thing I look back and I tell people. I tell the guys I train at my gym. I let them know, like, you guys are going to go pro. Also, I'm instilling this into my son. If you guys are going to go pro, realize that boxing is a business. That's one thing that I didn't take a business mindset into boxing, an entertainment aspect of it. Boxing is the entertainment business, so you have to entertain the fans. You have to give them something else. Like Fury gives them that extra. That's what makes you a star. Muhammad Ali did it. I thought I was in the mindset of my skills. I'm going to fight. I come from, North Philadelphia, where the guy who talked a lot was considered the chump. So that type of mindset, that lifestyle was ingrained in me. So I brought that toughness that I got from Philadelphia and everything else into my boxing, which made me a 2-time world champion, which made me one of the best cruiserweights. But I didn't separate all right, we need entertainment too, Steve. We need to talk a little bit more. We need to call out some guys. We need to this or that. And I didn't really have a team like that. Me and my wife, we did this all on the strength of just us. So we really didn't have a team to be like, hey, listen, let's do this, let's do that. Hey, let's call out David Haye publicly. Keep calling. Let's go to his fight and call him out. Let's do this, let's do that, stuff like that. So that's one regret, is that I just didn't have that entertainment gimmick, that one thing, something, to draw extra attention to me outside of being a great fighter, being one of the best cruiserweights for an era, doing all these great things in the ring, but entertainment wise, you gotta sell yourself, doing something different. Now, I'm not saying I'd have did it like, Broner's doing it, or flushing money down the toilet, or some of these other guys, they go a little extra, but still need some type of entertainment gimmick or aspect. I'll say, I won't say gimmick, but aspect to your persona.
That's great advice, and if you're a young fighter listening to this, I think that's really helpful in terms of how you want to manage and build your career. Steve Cunningham, I want to thank you so much for the time. Best of luck to you as you make your comeback. Best of luck to you training your sons. Thank you so much for breaking it down and giving us the unique analysis. Thanks so much again, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Yo, man, anytime.
The great Steve USS Cunningham training for a comeback himself, so we may see him in the ring sometime soon. So he was uniquely qualified to talk about this fight because he's actually been in the ring with Tyson Fury, and he's actually the only other person besides Deontay Wilder to knock down Fury. Another person who is uniquely qualified to talk about this rematch is the third man in the ring. That was Jack Reiss. When Wilder and Fury first squared off, the referee in that fight was Jack Reiss, and of course he was extremely important because he had the count in the 12th round. When Tyson Fury was knocked down, it didn't look like he was going to get up, but he did, and we're going to talk to Jack Reiss about that, and we're going to talk about the latest fight between Bryant Perella and Abel Ramos, where there was some controversy in the final round. There was less than 10 seconds left. Perella, who was winning the fight, was knocked down, and when he got up, Jack Reiss decided that he was no longer fit to continue. He waved it off, and that fight was a knockout for Ramos, a knockout win for Ramos at 2:59 in the final round. So I'm going to talk to Jack Reiss about Wilder Fury and about the fight between Perella and Ramos. Lucky enough to be chatting with Jack Reiss, the legendary referee. Jack, we know that you were the ref for Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury 1, and we have the rematch coming up, and I do want to talk about that. But before that, there was an interesting matchup and an interesting moment last Saturday night, and that was between Bryant Perella and Abel Ramos. Now, before we even talk about that fight, I noticed you were also reffing the fight right before that one, right? So is that common that... Because I know refs do multiple fights in one night, but is it common for it to be back-to-back like that?
No, it's not. But, this is what they needed. So, of course, we just do whatever they need. They don't – I was very fortunate for them to ask me to come and do it. And if they had me do all three, I would have done all three.
So let's talk about Bryant Perella versus Abel Ramos. So was there any – I know that you are a student of the game. I know that you do a lot of research and work. Did you think about, Perella is going to maybe put a lot of volume together. Ramos maybe is a guy who's going to go for the knockout. Is anything like that in your mind at all?
Yes. For this fight, when I found out which fighters I was doing, I went to BoxRec, checked their records out, went to YouTube, watched them fight. The first fight I had with Magdaleno and Dule, I had a righty against the lefty, which sometimes creates a problem. Actually, all the time creates a problem. I'm sorry, two lefties. And on this one, I had a righty against the lefty. If I remember correctly, it was one way and one the other. So I'm looking for stuff like that because I know when it's a righty against the lefty, I'm going to keep a little bit further back than my normal distance because peripherally, I want to keep not only the upper part of their body and where the punches are landing, I want to be able to see their feet in case their feet get caught up and a punch at the same time and the feet contribute to the knockdown. I'm going to call it a slip, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, in this case, Perella was the southpaw, Ramos the orthodox fighter.
I couldn't remember it because it happens.
And there's also, of course, it's common that can be headbutts in situations like that and things like that. So it makes sense that you are slightly more removed. So in that fight, it's going along, and Perella's doing his thing. He in the 10th round at one point he was up 198-79 in punches landed by CompuBox. So what that means is he was outlanding his opponent by more than double. So by most people watching, you would think that he was comfortably ahead. Now, I know that you told me that in California, there's times when they'll tell the referee the scorecard so that you can be more effective in terms of your position of deciding to stop a fight against, for someone who has no hope or no chance, and it might be the best thing in their interest to stop a fight. But this was in Nashville, so I'm guessing that you had no idea about the actual scorecards.
No, but I felt that Perella was comfortably ahead. He was outboxing Ramos at the time, although Ramos was giving his best and hitting Perella with some good shots as well. In fact, that evening, because I really didn't know the doctors or the commission or the timekeeper as well, I wanted everybody to be comfortable with me. I introduced myself, and every single round of the fights, I communicated with the doctor in between rounds to tell him what I was seeing, because I didn't know his experience level. And I remember mentioning how the fight's shifting, and I remember mentioning to him about the welt under the not laceration, abrasion, and a little bit of a contusion underneath Perella's eye. And I remember, telling him earlier in the fight how Ramos, his nose was bleeding, possible broke it, maybe not.
And so the last round, like we said, Perella was doing his thing. There was about 30 seconds left to go in the last round. And at that point, I'm just curious, your mindset. Are you thinking about, okay, this fight is most likely going to go to a decision, and you're going to have to step in at the final bell, put your hands between the two guys? Had you started to mentally prepare for kind of the normal end of a fight type of scenario?
No, I knew it was the last round, and because I'm always keeping track of the rounds, and sometimes when I lose track of the rounds, I'm asking the timekeeper what round it is before I start the round. And I also like to do that to tell the fighters when I say to them, show me your mouthpiece, round 8, show me, you know what I mean? And then the last round, I brought them out and had them touch gloves. So I knew it was the last round, but I think I've explained this to you before. In the championship fight, the championship rounds are when the things happen, 9, 10, 11, 12. In a 10-round fight, 8, 9, and 10 is when the things are going to happen, because the fighter who is behind, his corner is going to encourage him to step it up, and he's got to get moving. He's got to take the guy out, or he's got to win these next 3 rounds, and the action gets heated up a lot of times. So I'm just focused and concentrating on what's happening, and when I hear the 10-second warning, then I close the gap and get ready to stop the fight.
So in boxing, we know, especially in the championship rounds, it can be the theater of the unexpected, and that's why we love this sport, because extraordinary things always happen. So in the 10th round, we learned later, when I look at the scorecards, 2 of them were 88-83. One of them was 87-84 for Perella. So Perella, we know now, was comfortably ahead. With 30 seconds left in round 10, Ramos lands a left uppercut, and down goes Perella. Take me through that moment from your perspective. Perella popped right back up, and by the time you were counting, even by 3, he was already up. But tell me about that first knockdown in round 10 from your perspective.
So he got hit with a beautiful, I want to say devastating uppercut, because if you go back and look at it, you'll see it was an instantaneous and total loss of muscle control. His body language when he went down was totally wild. The blood flow or the electricity from his to his brain immediately shut off like a light switch, and he fell straight down. He went straight down. Please watch it again. You'll understand. The quality of that knockdown tells me something different than a flash knockdown. The second thing that you mentioned, I was very surprised and not upset. I was concerned that he popped up real quick, because getting hit like that with a knockdown, fighters, good fighters, which Perella is a good fighter, so I thought maybe he wasn't taught this, or he was so out of it, he just did what was on instinct. When you get hit with a shot like that, good fighters take a knee, wait till the 8 or 9 count, and slowly get up. Because at our age, you and me right now, we were down on the ground and we jumped up as fast as we can. Believe me, our blood pressure, our equilibrium would be off and we'd be dizzy. Can you imagine getting hit with a shot like that and then popping up? It's always better for a fighter on a really hard knockdown, take a knee, and then get up at 8 or 9.
It is.
So,
sorry, go ahead.
And he popped up. And let me educate everybody. Curran, let me say this too. Man, I did not want that fight to end like that. That was the last thing in the world I've ever wanted to be involved with, a situation like that. But it happened, And when he went down like that, what I'm looking for is a referee. Number one, take your time, get up slow. Number two, what's he going to do after the knockdown? And what I want them to do, referees, what we want them to do, number one and number two is run. Number two is hold, in that order, 1 and 2. And if everything after that is take a knee, spit out your mouthpiece, bob and weave, the last thing I want to see them do is stay put and fight back because they're concussed. That's how they get knocked out. And when they stand still and fight back, it tells me they're on instinct. They can't run. They can't hold. Because as a human, if you get hit and you're buzzing, you're hurt, the last thing you want to do is get hit. It's a normal reaction to want to put distance between you and the harm. So anyway, unfortunately, the second thing that Perella did was he got up and he just put himself on the ropes, covered up, and started taking punches. And please look at this again. The punches that he threw back had 0 on them. They were arm punches and they were slow. So I was extremely concerned. And like I do in fights where a guy gets knocked down, especially if he gets knocked down hard, I closed the gap. My distance was very close. And you can see in the films, I was right on top of the action. By the way, when he got up the first time, there's something that I think I've given you the written language on it, the written policy on it. Let me go back and say in the old days, we used to just say to the fighter after he got up, "You okay? All right, give me your gloves and let him go." And 99 out of 100 times, they got knocked out. And the doctors, the ringside physicians have taught us, and now it's a policy from the commissions, not all of them, but New York, New Jersey, California, give them what we like to call a referee's sobriety test. Any drunk can stumble forward 2 or 3 steps, but a fighter who is concussed or a person who is drunk has trouble navigating their body when they have to turn. So the ringside physicians have taught us, and we've been doing it 2 or 3 years, a lot of us, that make the guy walk to his right or left, stop, turn, and come back to you, because it's going to be extremely difficult for that person if he's really hurt. So that's what I asked him to do, because that was a devastating knockdown. And when I made him walk to his left, he did it on shaky legs, but I believe that that moment he was at about 60%, 55 to 60% of his capacity. And that was enough to let me know he can intelligently defend himself. And I felt if Ramos didn't jump on him right away, he might be able to get back up to 70 or 80 and be in this fight. And if he held and stalled, he'd make it. And he deserved to, because he fought so well prior to that. So when I let him go, unfortunately, it was disappointing. He didn't have that in him. He stayed on the ropes and threw some really soft, slow shots, got hit with a couple of shots. And then when he took a step to move away, he got hit with a flush right hand that was a punch and a push at the same time. But he went flying back because he didn't have his balance, almost like, he was thrown, but he wasn't. It was just because he didn't have balance, which demonstrated to me he still wasn't good, and fell against the ropes. And then when he got up this time, I again assessed him. He was trying to respond to my questions. He was, shaking his head, which I asked him to do. And I told him, walk this way and then come back to me. And he wasn't in control of his body. He kept going. He was looking at me and he was trying to stop, to turn back. And he actually stumbled and just kept going forward. To me, at that point, he was in no condition to intelligently defend himself. So if there was time left on the clock, there's no question I would have stopped that fight. And at that point, I couldn't, in my right conscience, turn around and rub his gloves and say box, because Ramos put him in that condition, and it would have been unfair to Ramos to take away the TKO. He earned that. he was in a condition there. He was no longer able to continue. I don't care how much time is on the clock. I had to do what was the right thing. Now, if Perella would have stopped, even if he turned slowly and was able to follow my commands slowly and give me something to work with, I would have said, box, the bell would have rang and we're done. But unfortunately, he was concussed. And I'm going to tell you something, Curran. I hope he would be kind enough to admit it, because he was a gentleman and a true professional. After the fight was over, and he goes, yeah, I was really hurt. I don't think he remembers anything that happened. That's how concussed he was. He probably don't remember a thing.
And it was a very difficult, interesting situation. Perella went down, and like you said, in the past with Tyson Fury, you told him, go that way and come back to me in the 12th round. And he did that. And he was able to intelligently defend himself, right? So we've seen that referee's sobriety text work before successfully. In this case, at the end, you were aware of how much time is probably left in the fight. If he had kept walking but didn't stumble, let's say he didn't turn around back to you, but he kept walking but did not stumble, would you have let it continue there, or was it the fact that he stumbled?
The stumble contributed, but he wasn't responding to stop, come back to me. And you could hear me. I watched it finally, and I was imploring him, turn back to me, come back to me. And he didn't, because he couldn't. I'll try to describe this best I can, but after the stumble, his body wasn't erect. His feet were out in front of him, and he was kind of trying to hold up his body and, kept going to the corner. He was totally concussed. And let me say this, okay? After the first knockdown, if this was the NFL, NHL, Major League Baseball, basketball, and an athlete went down like that, they'd go into the concussion protocol. They'd bring out a stretcher, put a seat collar on him, and take him off the rink, the court, whatever. We have 8 to 12 seconds to assess if we can let him get more concussed. And people just don't understand it. He wasn't going to get damaged after that, but the reason I stopped it was because Ramos earned the stoppage. I couldn't, again, in my conscience, with a guy I would never let continue, go box. Well, because I'm going to let the time run out, because that's the right thing to do. It's not. How would Ramos's corner feel? What would they have been thinking?
And you were obviously assessing him to see if he's okay to continue and to make the right call for his health and his family watching. Did part of you say, whatever I do in the next second, whether it be waving it off or letting it go, is actually going to determine the winner of this fight? Was that in your head at all?
No, absolutely not. I did what I instinctually do and what I've trained myself to do, and that is, in these situations, if the guy gives me anything to work with, I'm letting it continue, knowing he's not going to take any more punishment. Let me back up and make it easier, okay? The objective of boxing is to knock the shit out of your opponent and knock him out, number one. Second one, if you can't knock him out, is to knock him senseless to where he can no longer intelligently defend himself, and you force the referee to stop it. The third thing is, if you can't do the first two, is to win round by round on points and win more rounds than the other guy. So Ramos did number two. He knocked him senseless to where the referee was going to be forced to stop the fight. I don't think anybody would argue with me if there was time left on the clock that I needed or didn't need to stop that fight. So my point is, Ramos did his job. He won. He deserved to win on a TKO.
So what I was going to say is that you can't be saved by the bell in any round. And so let's say he had gone down with, let's just say hypothetically, 2 seconds left in the round, and he pops up and you're giving him the count. As you're counting, the bell rings, right? What is the situation there?
The bell won't ring. Let me explain it to you. The rule says fighter cannot be saved by the bell in any round. And the reason it's like that is because after the 10-second warning is given, if there's a knockdown and you're in the middle of counting, the people who made the rules feel that the fighter, just because if he's on the ground and you're counting him out, you need to count him out because that guy put him in that spot, count him out, fight's over. The guy who put him in that spot should win the fight. It would be ridiculous if during the legal course of a round, fighter A knocks down fighter B is out on his back, and you let the bell ring, and then I got to raise the guy's hand from the ground because he's now the winner on points. It's ridiculous. Think about it. So that's why the rule is in. If the punch came within the time frame, it's not over until the referee says box, or the guy recovers enough that you would let him box. And the timekeeper is not supposed to ring the bell until the referee's done with the assessment and says box. And that timekeeper will stop the time if it's going past at 2:59.
And that's what happened then here, because I took a stopwatch to the beginning of the round, and by the time you waved it off, it was actually at 3 minutes and 5 seconds. But to your point, that's because we're in that pause period, and if you wave it off, it counts as 2:59, right?
Yes, and if you think about it, at 3:05, okay, just like you're saying, is when I verified the condition he was in. 8 seconds before that, he was in worse condition.
Right.
So there's no question about what you got to do.
And was there any part of you that as soon as he went down, were you thinking maybe I might wave this off?
No, because I wanted to give him every benefit of the doubt, and I think that, and I've been told, and I got to be honest with you, I've been called by quite a few referees and real boxing people, and just totally supportive, outstanding call, and that was the right thing to do, and all that stuff. But in this case, just like in a world championship fight with Fury and Wilder, I want to give a guy every single opportunity to get up and finish the fight. I always want it to come to a natural conclusion. Sometimes it doesn't. So to let everybody know what I'm seeing, I always like to get him up if possible and give him that referee sobriety test. Now, let me back up and say this. Guy's losing. It's a 10-round fight, and he's lost 6 in a row, and he gets dropped hard. I'm waving it off. Unless he's like this incredible puncher and really has a puncher's chance, and he's been landing before, maybe I'll give him a chance. But if a guy doesn't have a mathematical chance to win, he doesn't have a puncher's chance, he's really fighting to survive, and we're past that point of no return, I'm waving it off. But that wasn't the case here. Perello was certainly winning and in the fight and deserved the opportunity to be looked at.
No, and that makes sense. And you did that. We talked after the Gamboa fight versus Tank Davis, where there was no chance of Gamboa to win, Gamboa to win, and you waved it off when he went down. So that made sense.
When he's on the ground.
Yeah,
exactly. So and let me say something too. Just if you could get a tape, of each stoppage, when I did Fury and when I did Gamboa and when I did Perello, and just watch how they move after the knockdown. When I ask them to move, you'll see a distinct difference between Wilder and Perello, because Wilder demonstrated he was in full control of his body. He actually did a little hop step and almost had a smile on his face. He was ready to go, where Perello was Frankensteined. He was stiff and struggling to look at me and couldn't stop. And Gamboa had just taken so much damage prior to that. It was 3 knockdowns, I think it was at the time. There's no point.
And after you made that call, of course, boxing Twitter blew up, as it's one to do. And they talked about Julio Cesar Chavez versus Meldrick Taylor. In your mind, are there any similarities or comparisons between these two scenarios?
There's absolutely a comparison. Fortunately for me, in today's modern era, I had more tools to use than Richard Steele. And in those days, they got him up, they looked in their eyes, they said, "You okay?" And that was it. They wiped their gloves, and that was it. Now I have an opportunity to make them walk, to make them talk to me. We're looking to find out their level of consciousness. And when we ask them a question, it's to know if they're alert and oriented to 3 things: person, place, and purpose. Who they are, where they are, and why are they there? And if they can answer those questions and then follow the commands, it will demonstrate their level of consciousness. And like I was saying, after the first knockdown, he was at about 55 or 60% Perella. After the second knockdown, he was below 50%. And that's what I look for. Because below 50%, there's no way you could, my feeling is you can't intelligently defend yourself.
In the last round, we know what happened there with Perella going down. You waved it off. Now, I've been talking a lot about fighters' safety. It's been pretty important for me, and I know for you as well. And part of what I think needs to change is the culture. And what I mean by that is fighters, when they're not fit to continue, they need to be okay with that. Trainers need to encourage that as well. One trainer that did not encourage that was Perella's trainer. And so I wanted to ask you, what did he say to you in the corner? And the reason I'm asking is because if you let that fight continue, and let's say if there was time left, and Ramos comes in and lands a huge shot, Perella's health is going to be in danger. His family is going to have to deal with that. So what was the trainer saying to you at that moment when you waved it off?
The trainer was screaming at me, "There's 3 seconds left. You stopped the fight with 3 seconds left." And like I tried to explain earlier, the clock doesn't matter. If one fighter renders the other fighter unconscious or not able to continue, the fight stopped. The fight's over. Whether there's 3 minutes left, 5 minutes left, 2 minutes left, or 1 second. That's the point that he didn't understand. What he was basically asking me to do was fudge those last 3 seconds, was let the fight go knowing that the guy would never be able to come running across the ring and hit him again because there wasn't that much time left on the clock. But that would have been cheating Ramos out of a legitimate TKO because he put him in that condition. And I would have never let anybody continue in the condition that Perella was in after the first knockdown. In fact, he just barely got me to let him go because I felt he earned it after the first knockdown because the body language on that knockdown and the way he got hit with that uppercut was an unbelievable shot. I give him credit for getting up. But yes, I agree we got to change the culture. I understand why his trainer was so upset, and that's why I didn't react. I just I kept professional and didn't say anything at that point to him.
Certainly, and after the fight, Abel Ramos obviously was happy with the win. I think he brought up the Chavez-Meldrick Taylor comparison. Bryant Perella, for his credit, did not choose to go down that route of saying anything like, trying to take the out of saying, you stopped it or anything like that. He seemed to be understanding at that moment. Was there any conversation between yourself and the fighters after the fight?
Yes, but let me tell you something. In my heart of hearts, this is what I believe. Okay, I've been in many fights growing up, and I've been in the ring more than I should have been, and I've been knocked out. And I got to tell you something. I don't remember anything after getting hit. I broke my jaw sparring, and I don't remember anything about after I got hit until I'm walking to my car. And I firmly believe the reason why Bryant didn't argue with me is because he didn't remember everything, and he knew he was out of it. He's honest with himself. You know what I'm saying? He knew he was hurt and he was out of it. And I got to tell you something too. I got to consider something you said. I gave him that chance to continue after that first knockdown. And if you don't think I'm concerned that his family, might be saying to me, "Why'd you even let him go after the first knockdown?" That's a possibility too. But he's taking shots in the head, not the trainer.
No, 100%. And I think it's the trainer's job at that moment to kind of understand the stakes and the health situation and not react like that. And that's very interesting also about your theory on Perella. I mean, we've seen fighters, there's times where fighters get completely knocked down and they don't even remember the knockdown happening, right? So it's very likely that that's possible. Yep. Mm-hmm. So the fight ends, they do their post-fight interviews. I know that you wanted to take a moment to look back at the end of the fight. You've obviously watched it I'm sure now maybe a few times. What has anything changed in terms of when you took a second to rewatch it, or is it the same feeling that you had after the fight?
It's stronger now, because to be very frank with you, when his trainer started yelling at me, I've never been reacted to that way, and that partly because his trainer is not like a world-class trainer that has a lot of champions. I don't know how much experience he has, but being frank with you, he's not like an A-type trainer. And so maybe he didn't understand. And the way he was speaking to me, the commission should have stopped him and stuff like that. But it gave me pause until I had to, until I looked at the fight. And I told his trainer, because he confronted me in the hotel as well, when we happened to cross past each other in the lobby. I told him, look, I am going to go home and put myself on check and watch this fight to see if there was something I could have done different or better. Until then, I did what I thought was right at the moment. And I told Brian the same thing. I said, Brian, I am sorry the fight ended the way it did. I never want a fight to end like that. And I will go home and I will put myself on check and see if there's something better or different I could have done. And I was pleasantly surprised that I received so much support and phone calls from referees all over the country that I know, telling me what a great stoppage it was, which made me feel a little bit better. And then when I watched it, I said, yeah, he's out. I would never let him continue if there was time left on the clock. Ramos deserved the win. We're done.
And people who
one more thing. Sorry, that scenario is a perfect example of a couple of things. One, it can't be saved by the bell in any round. But number two, boxing people or non-boxing people that watch boxing are extremely critical on judges and referees. And I am here to attest to you that in person, it looked way worse than it did on TV. In fact, one of the guys from the studio came up to me and said, Jack, this was in the dressing room afterward. He goes, we saw what you saw live, but the video doesn't show it. And I didn't realize till we got home, because you couldn't see his whole body. They zoomed in on us. Mm-hmm. And you couldn't see everything. And the same thing when a guy's judging a fight. You can't see everything because the camera angles change. And if you go back to Wilder Fury, you'll see a camera change right before Wilder gets dropped in the 12th round.
Before Fury gets dropped.
Before Fury gets dropped in the 12th round. The camera changed. And you miss a little bit. And I'm telling you, it's way different in person for judges, and in this case for referees as well, when you're ringside or you're in person than it is on television. I would love to see a camera mounted stationary somewhere that the fighters couldn't get hurt, but in the corner that you could see the entire ring from that camera, so you never eye level, so you never miss anything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And after the fight, on the broadcast, people who know boxing, Joe Goossen, Brian Kenny, they all felt like you made the right decision. I felt like you made the right call. And so people who knew boxing knew that was the right call. I don't know if you ended up logging on to social media, Twitter, anything like that, to see people who maybe in their opinion thought it was not the right call. Did you see any negative reaction? Did you read anything like that?
Listen, like I said, I got a lot of support from my friends on it. And when they called, they said, are you okay? I said, I'm fine. Why? And they told me, they said, you're getting hammered on the internet. So I said, okay. And then, the people have sent me different things, and I've seen it overwhelmingly on all of the things that I've seen. The support for the stoppage was greater than the negativity that I shouldn't have.
And just looking back, it's funny that we're sitting here this week talking about this fight, right? Because it was a good fight, but we didn't think it was going to be noteworthy. Was it surprising to you that this fight kind of came out of nowhere in terms of being noteworthy for the way it ended?
Well, I think you're being very gentle and kind with me. It's controversial.
Right.
It's and the last thing I want to be is controversial. And it just seems lately that, the luck of the draw, I've been on some high-profile fights or highly televised fights that it didn't go, it wasn't black and white, it was gray, and I made something black and white out of that gray in an instant. And let me say this, too. I make mistakes. Everybody does. But we, as boxing officials, especially referees, have the hardest officiating job of anybody, and I'm going to tell you why. In every other sport, they have a team. In every other sport, when something happens, they call time, they huddle up together, and they decide what is fair and what is the best thing for that sport. We make a call, and we live with it. Done. In the moment, in the heat of battle. It's hard. I'm not complaining. No. I'm just explaining.
No, it's very difficult. It's one man, and the thing is, as one man or woman, and us as observers, we have it on our DVR. We can rewind and look back. They have replays. We can analyze. We can see other camera angles. When you're in there as the third man in the ring, and you have to make a split-second decision, I mean that's extremely difficult. And I think the fact that you were able to make the right decision without being, steered by, oh, this is how it's going to affect the fight. You made the right decision in terms of fighter safety. I think that was definitely the right thing to do. So I know I've taken up a lot of your time, and I want to talk about Fury Wilder real quick. The last thing I wanted to ask.
May I just say one thing?
Yeah, please.
I want everybody to understand I didn't make the decision out of fighter safety that night.
Right.
I made it out of fairness. He was no longer able to. There's no way he was able to intelligently defend himself from that point on. And the clock, take the clock out of it. He was no longer able to do that, right? Put the clock in it, and I know he's not going to get hit again. It don't matter. The other guy deserved the win because he did this to him.
Right.
In fact, let's put it down to the most rudimentary terms imaginable. If this was two kids fighting in a schoolyard, which one would you rather be?
You'd rather be Ramos.
Hey, that's the point.
Yep. That's the point. It's who would you rather be? And to your point, Ramos did what he had to do to win the fight.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you something else, Curran. I had street fights, and one street fight I had in shorts and a tank top in the middle of the summer in New York, my shoulders, elbows, and knees were bloody from rolling around on the asphalt with this guy, and I was kicking his ass. And guess what? Guess what? He nailed me. His head hit my nose. I don't remember hardly much after that. He won. I lost. I was doing great. He was doing great, but I didn't win.
Yep.
I'm just trying to tell you.
Yep.
No, and that makes sense. And so my last question on this whole situation before we move on, because I know we brought up Chavez versus Meldrick Taylor, and I know that obviously you said referees didn't have the same tools that they have now. I'm just curious, as an observer, when you look at that fight and the way that fight ended, what do you think about the way that fight ended? Do you think that was also the right call that Richard Steele made with 2 seconds to go to wave it off?
In that particular fight, at that particular time, the only difference was Richard Steele, there wasn't 2 knockdowns. He had 1, right? And Taylor got up in terrible condition. I don't think he was able to intelligently defend himself. He wasn't responding to Richard Steele. The deficit or detriment to Richard Steele was he didn't have any tools to sell the call. So no one realized, lots of people realized how bad of shape Meldrick Taylor was in, but Richard didn't have the tools in those days of answer my questions, walk to me, do things like that. So people were saying he made it to his feet. He made it to his feet. You can't stop the fight.
Right. That makes sense.
Well, it's not about making to your feet. It's about, is this guy ready to continue? Can he continue? So,
right.
Can he continue? And that brings me to Fury versus Wilder here, because as you know, I produced the Countdown show. You were featured on it. We talked a lot about the fight, and one of the biggest moments, probably in heavyweight history, was in that 12th round. Fury gets dropped. As he gets up, the words come right out of your mouth. You can hear it, and it says, "Can you?" You said, "Can you continue?" And then when he said yes, you told him to walk to his side and come back to you, just like you told Perella. But in this case, Fury was able to do that. So we are. He certainly did, and we are on the eve of that huge rematch. So let me ask you this: it's an interesting question for you because you had the vantage point that really no one else on planet Earth had. You were the third man in the ring. Do you take any pride in the fact that you, by making the correct call in that fight, now we are all lucky enough to have this huge rematch? I mean, if you had waved it off, which would have been the incorrect decision there, you made the right call, and now we have a huge rematch. Do you take any pride in that?
What do you think?
I would say yes.
Let me just tell you something.
Yes.
If it's this simple, okay? There was a professional sportscaster today, which I'm shocked, said I robbed Wilder of a victory because I picked up the count late and my count was whatever, right? It's stealing from a wonderful moment. That's number one, because that guy is 100% incorrect. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And that was a great moment in boxing history that I just happened to be part of. And now this is the best. These guys are making a hell of a lot more money. The fans are going to get a great fight. So yeah, I'm happy I was part of it, but I'm happy I was part of it because I believe in my heart of hearts I made the right decision. And you know how I know that? Two ways. Number one, the way Fury responded after that devastating knockdown. He ran, he held, he survived the next 30 seconds, and then he came back. And the rest of the round after that 30 seconds, I'm not saying he won the round, but he won that portion of it after the knockdown. That's number one. Now, because if he would have got up and got knocked out, Curran, I wouldn't be a very popular person. I probably wouldn't even be working anymore. People would, they would have been chastising me. And the second reason I know what I did was right was that the promoters want me on the fights. The commission is still using me on the fights. If I had made the wrong decision and I was impatient and I just waved it off, maybe not.
And right, 100%, and that makes sense. So you were the third man in the ring. You had a vantage point that no one else on planet Earth had. I don't want to necessarily say you have to, of course, make a pick, but if you were to just kind of handicap it for us and say, based on what you saw and that unique vantage point, do you have a sense of how you think this rematch is going to play out?
I don't know how it's going to play out, but I have to tell you, it's even bigger than the first fight. It's more exciting than the first fight for a few reasons. Number one, Wilder went into the first fight coming off a broken hand. He was hardly using it in his fights before that, and I heard he didn't even use it in sparring before the Fury fight. That hand has now been healed, and it's proven it's healed because he knocked two guys out in devastating fashion since that fight. Second thing is Wilder has admitted he got caught up in the moment and he got emotional and he just wanted to knock this guy out. He might come in with a little bit more of a controlled game plan. The other side of it is Fury came into that fight after losing 100 pounds, having a mental breakdown, and you didn't know and no fights. You didn't even know what kind of condition he was going to be in, and he demonstrated that he can carry a 256-pound, 6'9" frame and bob and weave and move for 12 rounds. Unbelievable that a guy could do that at that weight. So this fight, and he's had two fights since then, and he's been maintaining the weight, although I am a little concerned that he's 15 pounds heavier for this fight, but he's been maintaining a decent fighting weight for him. So now we got two better versions of both guys. Both guys know what to expect from each other. I would imagine they've changed little things here and there to assist them in beating the opponent that they had last time. I just see it nothing but more exciting, more interesting. And it's who's going to make that mistake first? Who's going to let his guard down first? And, people think that, people say that Fury don't have a chance to knock him out. That's a 6'9", 270-pound, 270-pound man. Believe me, he can knock somebody out, especially with fatigue as part of it. And Wilder, We all see what that right hand, when it's healthy, can do. This fight's going to be bigger, better, and I can't wait to watch it.
And in this fight on February 22nd, the referee is Kenny Bayless, who's also a fantastic referee as well. Do you look at that and say, man, I wish I was in there refereeing this fight because it's such a big event? Or do you say, hey, good luck, because it's obviously tough when you have these two giant men and the stakes are so high? What is your view on that?
I absolutely would have loved to have done this rematch. Any referee who tells you different is a liar. The other side of it is, hey, I understand you can't get every fight, and I love Kenny like a brother, and he's a fantastic referee, one of the best in the world, and I know he's going to do a fantastic job like he always has done in the past. He's so experienced and so calm in there. He's going to do a great job.
And just to close it out, this huge mega fight, tell me the Jack Reiss plan for watching it. Where are you going to be? What's the plan? How are you going to enjoy this big event?
I have a close friend and his wife. They're close friends of my wife and I. And I've been invited to a bunch of different places to come watch the fight, and I was also going to do it at my own house. But my close friend, who has like an 85-inch TV with the craziest sound, his profession, he owned a sound studio, and he used to change movies from English to Spanish, top movies, everything you can imagine, to whatever. So he's very into that kind of equipment. His TV is unbelievable, and he promised me no one else is coming over except the four of us, so I can watch it and concentrate without people yelling and asking stupid questions, and I could just watch it and enjoy the fight.
Well, I hope you enjoy it. You've certainly deserve it. You've earned it from your great work, and not just recently, but for a long, long time as the third man in the ring. I want to thank you so much for breaking it down and for giving us that insight. As boxing fans, we don't get this insight anywhere else of hearing what it's like in your head when you have to make these tough split-second decisions. So I want to thank you so much for the time.
You're very welcome, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to get my side out there, as well as I believe this is educational for the boxing fans, whether they're a new fan or they've been around for a long time, to hear this perspective and give them something to consider moving forward. And I just wish it wasn't me that was in the controversies when you're interviewing me. So if you want to interview me again when it's somebody else, please do.
Jack Reiss there, always honest, always giving us great stuff and breaking it down. My final guest, she's been in the news lately, and that is Franchon Crews-Dezurn. She just came off the controversial fight with Alejandro Jimenez. I say it controversial because Jimenez ended up winning the fight, but Jimenez has since tested positive, and there are implications that go with that. So I'm going to have that conversation with Franchon Crews-Dezurn to talk about what happens next for her. Is she going to get the title back? And we're also going to talk about the hair moment in the corner heard around the world. We're going to talk about Snoop Dogg. So here's my conversation with Franchon Crews-Dezurn. I am Curran Bhatia, joined by Franchon Crews-Dezurn.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining me, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that you just took on Alejandra Jimenez in your last fight, right?
Yes.
And when that fight was first made, what did you know about Jimenez? Because she had actually fought as high as heavyweight, and I looked it up. At one point, she fought at over 235 pounds, and she was coming down to your weight class of 168. So were you aware of that? Was that a concern at all?
Well, I was very aware. I'm a student of the game, and anybody that I fight, I do my homework. I keep my ear to the street. And the fight was originally scheduled for September, but the day before we were to weigh in, she pulled out. So, my antennas went up when they made the fight period. Like I said, I've been around a very long time. I'm familiar with weight loss and all these things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the weight and the skill wasn't a concern for me because I fought as heavy. I've been in light heavyweight and won titles at that weight. So my power can carry over.
Now, first of all, before we even get into the fight, I need to ask you about your ring walk, because this was of epic proportions, right? So how did this come together?
So 2020 is the year of, first of all, starting a new decade, and it's the year of clear vision. And after my last fight, when I became a unified world champion, I said, I'm going to walk into my excellence. And I only started boxing because I wanted to be a singer. So this was my moment to be like the superstar that I am, that I wanted to be, and also pay homage to like some dope artists from Texas. I wanted to show San Antonio, Texas that, thank you for welcoming me. I'm here to put on a show. So I did an ode to Beyonce, and I wanted to bring some people from where I'm from, which is Baltimore. And, it's a beautiful city, but we have a lot of negative things going on. So I wanted some people from there to experience my world. And the drummer was from Philly, so that was that B-Hop Philly connect, and he was a street performer. He's really dope, and I saw him when I was in Philly, so I was like, come on. And one of the fun facts, one of the dancers was my husband's sister, so my sister-in-law
there you go
was dancing with me too.
Yeah. So you come into the ring, you have a lot of confidence, and we start the fight with Jimenez. So here's my question. We know that she's a larger opponent, 5'11". Like we said, she's come down in weight. She used to be a heavyweight. I know that you sized her up probably at the weigh-in and at press conferences, but was it different being in with her in the early rounds?
So, as I said, I did my homework. Seeing her fight at a heavyweight, she had power, but it wasn't devastating power. I hit as hard as a heavyweight. She didn't take a punch. She didn't have like a great chin, even at heavyweight. I saw her when she fought at super middleweight, and she couldn't take a punch like that. And she fought girls who were like souped up super welterweight. She never fought a true middleweight until she fought me, and she wasn't hurting them. So that was what I had, and that was her last fight was a year ago. So it was kind of a surprise when we got into the first round, the first and the second round, because her power wasn't like a woman. It wasn't like a man either. I've sparred plenty of men and practiced with them, but it was just different. That's how I can describe it, very different.
And when you say, so her power wasn't like a man or a woman, what does that mean to you? What do you think was the situation there?
It wasn't, because we have, documented that she did have a type of steroid in her body.
Right.
I will attribute the different to that, because as the fight went on in the later rounds, she slowed down and her punches weren't as hard as they were in the beginning.
Okay.
I could take a punch, but in this fight was the first time I ever was affected by a punch. And that was like, oh, I know me. Hold on, what's going on?
And was it just her power that you noticed, or was it also her ability to take your punches? Because you came out strong in that first and second round.
It was a lot, and I'm pretty sure if you watched the fight, you could see on my face in the corner, I'm like, what is going on? It wasn't a normal fight, and it never was, oh, I'm scared, or I'm going to lose. It was just like, something isn't right. Something isn't right. And yeah, she recovered crazy. Like, I heard her the first round and she almost went out. And by the time I got my hand back, she was charging at me again. So, yeah.
And your trainer in between rounds, we noticed that he was asking you to brawl less, right? To box more, work behind the jab. Was that difficult to do, just given the circumstance of having a large opponent who's kind of swarming you, who's not going away? Was it difficult to try to get your rhythm in terms of boxing instead of brawling?
Well, as I stated, in the second round, I got caught with a very good punch. And I had to be safer for myself. And boxing or trying to box wasn't going to be the best option at that moment. One, because I wasn't 100% there. And two, if she's coming towards me, I'd rather smother her punches than to try to stay on the end of it, because that wasn't working for me until I got myself together.
So we get to the middle rounds. It's a close fight. You're having success, especially in round 5. One thing your trainer said, which I think most likely motivated you, because it was motivational to see it on TV, and he said, don't let her walk out with your future. When you heard those words, did that light a fire up under you? Of
course, it lit a fire. Like, I'm like I said in my press conference, I'm like Cinderella, and everything that I have, I worked extremely hard from the first fight with Clarissa Shields, and coming out with a loss, of course, and I grind, and I would never let anybody take anything from me. So I owe it to myself the people who supported me, my husband, and people who look up to me just to fight. I'd rather go out on a shield than to go out like a wimp.
I know that you said before the fight you spoke to a little girl who said that you inspire her, and I'm sure that was in your mind in these middle rounds, right?
Yeah. I've never, like, I only almost quit on myself one time, and my husband spoke life into me, and then a year later we were married. But that feeling that I felt at that point, and that was at the Olympic trials, the first one, and I said I'm never going to feel that again. I owe it. I have to give it my all. You know? And
you were doing that in the middle rounds and the late rounds, but we could also tell from your body language, there was a few tumbles where you guys went to the canvas and it looked like you were, trying to get up and catching your breath a little bit. What was that feeling? Was there a little bit of fatigue setting in for you?
So a lot of people say, oh, you have to be in better shape. I want to explain one thing.
Yeah, please.
So as an elite athlete, Team USA 12 years, competing at an elite level for many years, and not even just boxing, take one of your best athletes. When you train to get something called a second wind. You only get that when you train hard. What we saw with that fight with her, it was one gear the whole time, and then it dropped. That went away. If I wasn't in shape, I wouldn't have been able to finish strong in the last 3 or 4 rounds. Was I fatigued? It was a lot going on. I had to deal with getting a good punch in, somebody swarming me, the thoughts in my mind like, oh, something isn't right. You know what I mean? I had a lot going on, and I was throwing a lot of punches too. So it's like, what could I do? If I would have just been done, of course I'm gonna fall and things happen, but if I would have kept declining even to the end of the fight, that's conditioning. I would give it to myself. I don't care what anybody say. I was in good shape to make it through that fight, take punches and still give punches. And
not only did you have to deal with your opponent coming at you, but we have to talk about between round 9 and 10. It was the comment. Iconic. The comment heard around the world. So just take me through from your perspective. What happened there?
So I play it myself. Like usually I have my stuff together, and even my hair is all braided under. But I don't know, because I knew, if things would have went the way it should have, she was supposed to be easy work. Put it that way, with my skill set and everything. I don't know. Usually my husband like, your hair straight, you good? I'm like, yeah. So 9th round, I'm fighting. I'm like, oh shit. Excuse my French, like my hair. So that was another distraction. I felt it like coming loose. And even like the last 10 seconds, I was like, oh my God, this thing that fell off. So I'm sitting in the corner. I'm just like, fix my hair. That's my first thing. I'm a diva. I'm like, fix my hair. Then my coach is like, take that shit off her head. And I'm like, no. But instead of running away from the moment, I embraced it. The thing that really got me through, and I don't want to be a softie because, Valentine's Day is around. My husband looked at me. I looked at him, and he said, it's okay. He patted my head. He's like, it's okay. And having that one person that I know would never betray me, never see anything wrong in me, and just like focus. You could see it on my face. You could see my whole demeanor change. And my coach is like, you want that hair, you want the belt. You want that hair, you want the belt. And not only did I say, fuck the hair, I want the belt, I pointed, I want the belt. Because I knew at the end of the day, people going to accept me for me. Like, I fought for something. And if I let something like a hair piece or a bra strap breaking or something stupid like that stand in the way of my legacy and my future, then I would never forgive myself. But in that moment, I really became the phoenix, because I was definitely in hell. It was definitely getting hot in that ring, and I still rose to the occasion. So yeah, I mean, it's iconic. I'm a diva. Beyonce fell down steps, got her hair caught in fans, and people forget words. This is what I do, and this is what makes me me.
And speaking of the public reaction, right, it transcended just boxing and sports. And one of the naysayers, we could say, was Snoop Dogg, right? So what happened with Snoop Dogg? What did he post, and how did you react?
He's everywhere right now. And a couple people, even Antonio Tarver, Layla Ali said some negative things. And with Snoop, I'm like, you could joke the situation, but he like called me a derogatory name. And I'm like, I'm just not a regular person. You wouldn't call LeBron James something bad. I'm a world-class athlete, whether my hair had a mishap or not. And, you know, a lot of my fans and supporters, like, reprimanded him. And so then I reprimanded him myself. And it's like, okay, since my wig got knocked off, look at you boxing. Step into my world. I bet you can't do what I do. And, you know, it went back. Even Oscar De La Hoya joined in. I was like, I'll promote you guys in Vegas. I'm like, make it happen. But, it, you know, any publicity is good publicity.
Right.
And he did take it down. So that shows character. And I would still love to meet him and maybe do some boxing for charity, or let's come together for kids that don't have hair and, you know, do something positive from it, you know?
So have you seen Snoop Dogg on the mitts, and what were your thoughts when you saw him hitting the mitts?
Some people had like inbox like, look at him boxing. So I found a video and I reposted it too. And I was like, okay, yeah, I will whoop your ass. But
easy work?
Yeah, I would have broke him down. He's got the height on me, but I think I would have like pulled some Tyson and just like broke him down to the body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we know that we've had YouTubers on the zone. Celebrity boxing has always been a thing. So is there a chance that this could actually happen? Would you be willing to participate in that type of fight, you versus Snoop Dogg?
I mean, I would. That would be technically the first male versus a female. But if we don't get in the ring together, I would train him. I'll be like, look, let me show you. I got you, Snoop. I got you.
So you want to extend the olive branch and say, hey, I'll help you work on that form a little bit.
He has great hair. Maybe he could hook me up with some hair care products or something, and I'll teach him some boxing lessons.
There you go. Hey, Snoop Dogg, if you're watching this, the partnership is right there for you. So we get back to the fight. The last round is a hard-fought round, and the bell rings. Now, let me ask you this. We know that you said it was a different experience for you in terms of that type of opponent, but did you think at the end of the fight, before the scorecards were announced, that you had won the fight?
I thought that I did enough to win the fight. I'll be honest. I fought, like, in those situations you black out, you just fight.
Yeah.
And it got to that point. I just had to keep working. I thought I did enough to win the fight. I wouldn't have been disappointed with the draw. Because she looks like she was the stronger person, like keep coming. But I definitely thought skill, will, determination, I set the tone, and I thought I won the fight.
So scorecards are announced. 1 scorecard for you, 2 for her. What was going through your head when they announced that Jimenez had won the fight?
I just was trying to process. I don't even know, like, leading into the fight, it was a lot. You know, boxing has a lot of politics, and the whole vibe was weird the whole week. And I always prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So when it happened, I wasn't surprised. I was just more, I guess, hurt. Like, yo, like, I work hard. Like, I lost my hair, and I'm out here putting in work and giving the show, and I'm the champion. And the rule and the law is to be the champ, you have to beat the champ. And I finished stronger than her. So
you felt she didn't do enough to take your belts from you, to beat the champion?
No, she did good in the first round. What she needed a title for was taking punches. Like, she's the champ of taking punches, you know? Now, giving them, no, she had good time, but, you know, January 25th revealed a whole lot. So it gave people a different perception of the fight. When they look back at the fight, they could see, oh, because if this was a fair fight, it would have been over probably in the 6th round.
And so, yeah, we'll talk about the fallout and the aftermath. But right after the fight finished, you were humble. You showed some humility in defeat, no excuses. When did you start to think about the fight and say, hey, wait a minute, I feel like something wasn't right there, and feel like something, you know, was up? Was it days later? Was it weeks?
No, honey, during the fight.
Yeah.
During the fight. During a press conference. Your voice is not going to be deeper than my husband's, bro. Like, things like that. But in the fight, I knew it was like, yo, something is not right. It was a lot of concern on my face. Not more so, of course, concern for my life. It's like, I can't give up because this is my life. But this is weird. Like, it's very weird. And that's the only word I can use to describe, like, different and weird. I've never experienced anything like that.
And so days after the fight, it was revealed that Jimenez did test positive for a performance-enhancing drug. Mm-hmm. Now, she had one test that was clean, then one that the A sample came up dirty, and then another one that was clean. So when you first heard the news, what was going through your head?
So my husband and I were on our way to New York, actually, to the Barclays fight to see Jarrett Hurd and Danny Garcia. And I happened to look at Instagram and I saw, boom, my name. So I'm like, my heart's beating because I'm like, oh, positive test. Franchon, I know I haven't done anything. What the hell is going on? And it showed that she had tested positive. Then maybe 7 minutes later, Golden Boy called me and reiterated what was already posted. And I just like, it was more so like a release, put it that way, because I know I'm not crazy. I don't know if you've ever experienced anything when you knew something was right, but everybody's saying, you're wrong, you're wrong. And I just was like, oh my God, my husband like, did somebody die? Because the sound that came out, it was just like, ugh, you know? Because I said, yo, I put my heart, my soul, everything. And if you're going to take it from me legit. So that was a release and confirmation for some of the things I was feeling. It gave me more hope, put it that way, because I'm a strong believer in energy and the universe, and what's meant for you is going to be for you. So right. I felt like, wow, okay. Wow, I probably get my belts. Like, this is okay, you know. So I just like, wow, and I just sat back and let it play out.
And did you feel vindicated?
I just felt, like, in a sense, I just felt that confirmation came. Like, I knew I wasn't crazy. Something wasn't right in that fight. And I don't care if her second test comes back negative or not. When all three of mine were negative, it was a variable there that shouldn't have been there.
And so they've changed it from a win for her to now a no contest or no decision. That is pending now. February 19th, right, is a big day.
Yes.
So are you counting down until February 19th?
No, I'm staying busy. Like, Big Mama got to eat. I still got to work. The belts, I make the belts. Because as you can see, she has the belts, but I'm still popping. So I still have to continue to invest in myself and move forward, because my life could have ended in the ring due to her being a PED user. But I took it in a humble form and just say, look, you got to live every day to the fullest. So I'm just focused on moving forward.
But do you take that personally, though? Because during the fight, Sergio Mora was on the call, and he actually compared the fight to Cotto Margarito. And when you look back at Cotto Margarito, Cotto takes it very personally, because Margarito, if he cheated, he put Cotto's life at stake, and that's going to affect his family, and he takes that personally. Do you feel the same way?
Of course, and it does. It affects you, like... Like, I'm traumatized. I'll put it that way. Nobody knows that I go through this personally, like, intimately, but my husband. And when they did say that she tested positive, that opened up a whole door and box of other emotions that I had put to the side, because I'm like, okay, shit, I lost the belts now. I just got to re-up how I'm going to, get back to where I need to be. But when that happened, it's just all these emotions I won't prepare for, and all these feelings. Like, it took me a while to even look at the fight, because I saw when I did get hurt and how I was fighting for my life the whole fight. It was big. It wasn't just boxing. Like, I'm fighting for my life, and I'm fighting for my future. And yeah, and then for them to use that analogy, you know what I'm saying? That means something. And I take it personally, very personal, because she planned for this. She did it for like a year, trained, and she knew what she was doing. She when I saw her in Mexico, she tried to intimidate me and disrespect me. So you have an issue with me, like, you're low. You would do anything just to get a belt, even put somebody's life at more risk.
And if you were able to speak to her now, what would you say to her now? Oh,
she's been harassing me on Twitter. Like, she's real bold, put it that way. And I just think that she just diminished the line of professionalism. Like, even if you knew you tested positive, the right thing to do is, if just like me, when people were attacking her, I didn't say anything. I never said, some of those rumors that were out. But I just remained professional and let the process go on. But for you to call, she told me I had an inferior complex. She told me that she's going to beat me up again and all of these things. And I'm like, sis, you just tested positive for steroids. Like, humble yourself. You got the belts. Why are you mad at me? I didn't pee in the cup. You did. So, if I was the old Franchon, it would be a whole different situation, put it that way. If I was rough around the edges Franchon, it would be a different situation. It would be on site, and that's on period.
So what the situation right now, it's been changed to a no contest. On February 19th, they're going to look at her B sample from the same testing period of the time the A sample tested positive.
Yes.
So a lot will be revealed then, and they're going to decide how to handle it then. But as of right now, in terms of the champion, is she still technically the champion right now at super middleweight?
Well, per WBC, she's provisionally suspended, and the title is vacant. I'm getting different resources are telling me that I am still the WBO champion because they followed a different protocol. January 29th, they gave her a 10-day notice, an opportunity to explain why did that substance pop up in your system. All I know is BoxRec, I'm still declared the champion of WBO. So it's progress, and if she's negative on the 19th, then everything, I guess, goes back to how it's supposed to be. If she's positive, then the right thing, I'm making strides into being reinstated.
And would you, in whatever case it happens on February 19th, are you going to be okay with it being a no contest or no decision, or do you want it to be changed to where she should be disqualified from that fight and that should be a win on your record?
I can't answer. I don't know. I'm cool. For me and my mental health, I'd rather just be like, it never happened. I just want things to be how it was before January 10th. I just want it how it was.
And with that said, I know after the fight you said you wanted a rematch. Do you still want a rematch?
Oh, I still want to tap that ass, but I just want to make sure that she's clean. I want the real her. I don't want this super mutant enhanced Jimenez. I want who was supposed to be in the ring, the one I sized up, the one I saw and trained for, not who came January 11th. And
so if, let's say it gets figured out, we run it back, VADA testing is involved, and she's clean all the way through, you would take the rematch then?
Oh, if she comes back negative, yeah. Yeah, they're going to have to pay me a lot of money because the trauma, everything I've been through,
right.
But it's going to be extensive testing this time, not just a month. I'm talking 8 weeks, 12 weeks, testing, and a lot of more provisions, because even as women's boxing is progressing, we're still at a disparity in a lot of areas. And I feel like with this situation, whether she comes back positive or negative, this is the opportunity to start holding the sanctioning bodies and all the parties affiliated with female boxing, holding them to a standard that we need protection to.
Who else do you want in the super middleweight division? We know Ellen Sederus just upset Alicia Napoleon. Of course, Clarissa Shields is out there. I know you fought her in your debut. Who would you like to fight in boxing right now?
I would love a unification match. One of my goals is to be undisputed. And then down the road, compete against another undisputed person like Clarissa Shields. There are a lot of names out there. Savannah Marshall, she's going up to light heavyweight, and I know she has some aspirations for super middleweight, and we faced each other before. But right now, my goal is just to make it about me. Like Clarissa, I've been fast-tracked for my career. I'm not like a Cecilia Burkes, and I'm, have a lot of things catered to me. I basically had to get it the hard way. So once everything is vindicated, because I will get my titles back, I would love like a fight to really hone my craft like I need to, and then we can make strides into to being undisputed, and giving some other girls opportunities too, because we have to build the sport, and you can't build it without having talent in those pools. But yeah, secure my bags and get my belts.
And we know that you made your debut against Clarissa, and it was also Clarissa's debut, right? So that's an interesting situation. Do you feel like you're a different fighter now, she's a different fighter now, and if you guys rematch in the near future, that'll be a totally different fight?
Yeah, I mean, we both, like you said, we're different fighters now. We've had different experiences. Me fighting like this last fight, and her with Hannah Gay was being knocked down. Like, I think we're stronger. I think it'll be similar to the first fight, but we wouldn't know who would win. I know I would train to win. I know she would train to win, but it's still going to be electrifying, and I feel like we just going to have to pull out all the stops. That's going to be a seriously iconic fight right there.
And so there's a lot of options out there. Obviously, the February 19th test may reveal some things and change some things. So if you had to give me your best guess, in a few months, you're back in the ring, who is standing across the ring from you, if you had to guess?
I don't know. Esmeralda from like Lower Manhattan or so. Just somebody. I don't know. Like I live my life the way it comes. I would have to sit with my team and see what works, because like I need to get through this situation. The heavy hitting diva, she's 100% fine. She'll fight anybody, male, female, human, alien, whatever. But Franchon Crews-Dezurn has to make sure it's okay for her.
And just to finally close it out, do you look back at everything you've achieved? You came into boxing, became a world champion. Now, I think from your last fight, even more people are aware of you and your brand, and you've been able to capitalize off of even that moment that we talked about between round 9 and 10. So just to close it out, do you look back at everything that you've achieved and look fondly at what's ahead?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my mom died December 7th, 2016. And that was the time that I was born again, because I said I'm going to live my life so hers wouldn't be in vain. And everything I've been through, from the amateurs through the professionals, it's put me at this moment right here. And I've affirmed all the positivity that's in my life. I know I'm in control of my reality through the higher power. And I know it's going to be lit. Like, I'm going to inspire so many people, and they're going to do the best they can in their lives. I'm here for a reason.
There you have it. Franchon Crews-Dezurn, thank you so much for the time. Thanks for filling us in on the situation, and best of luck to you. We're looking forward to seeing you back in there.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And that is going to bring us to the end here. Enjoy the fight this weekend, the epic matchup, Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury II. It's on pay-per-view. You don't want to miss this one. It's everything you'd ever want in a heavyweight fight, as we've been saying. So enjoy that. I want to thank all my guests, and that is Joe Goossen, Steve Cunningham, Jack Reiss, and Franchon Crews-Dezurn. Thank you guys for coming on the show. Thank you everyone who listened. If you want to follow us, you can follow at ATE_podcast. That's on Instagram and Twitter. If you want to follow my personal channels, it's at CurranBhatia on Instagram and Twitter. That's at Curran Bhatia on Instagram and Twitter. Please subscribe on YouTube, youtube.com/Curran Bhatia. Please check out our show on iTunes. Hit subscribe. Give us a 5-star review. If you want to email the show, it's asktheexpertspod@gmail.com.